You know what's true about this world? We like to celebrate flashy things. All I have to do is look at my most liked photos on Facebook to know that exciting life events are what get the most glory. But you know what else is true? Suffering. And based on my experiences, we never talk about it. I know far too many people carrying heavy burdens daily that don't get enough credit for displaying the courage it takes to get out of bed every morning. Or not get out of bed sometimes, if you're like me. This is the place where people receive that credit. This is the place we honor choosing grit.
Ready?
No. Hey everybody, Carrie here. Welcome to season 2 of the I Choose Grit podcast. Good to be here. It's been a bit since I've shared an episode, and safe to say our lives have gotten a little bit crazy. Even just within my own little circle, aka my quarantine, I've seen people navigating job loss, trying to safely plan a wedding at this time, figuring out how to effectively be a teacher or a therapist while still keeping everyone healthy, how to parent a newborn, how to start college, how to still be an earnest person and really just maintain some sort of normality in the midst of a global pandemic. When I shared my first interview ever with you all on New Year's Day this year, the very first day of 2020, I knew that choosing grit would be relatable to most on one level or another, because I think that's just life. But I definitely could not have imagined how much grit 2020 would be asking of all of us. Throw in literally record-breaking wildfires and hurricanes and major societal injustices that we need to do something about, and it's no doubt that this year is a little out of hand. And I think we just need to take a moment to acknowledge that and be okay with being a little overwhelmed. That being said, in terms of my own experiences of this year so far, I have to say that although much of it feels foreign, which is one reason I think this is also stressful, as someone with a chronic illness, there are also completely 100% some aspects of this year that feel incredibly familiar to me. It's weird and kind of consoling, and I think I've mentioned this, but concept of slowing down and canceling things and at times just completely needing to stop, pretty experienced with that. Figuring out a way to work from home or maintain a job while still staying healthy, definitely been there too. Apprehension over a big event because I don't know how it will affect me physically. Got that. However, probably the most familiar aspect of all of this to me is the threat of isolation that this year has brought to all of us. And really the way it's jeopardizing our ability to stay connected to people we really care about. It seems that even though I tend to think it's kind of boring, people appreciate when I share more of the details of my story, so let me elaborate a little bit. When I reflect back on the first few years, my health took a dive. When it was a whole new thing that I didn't really understand, and I had no idea how it was going to impact my life or how long it would stick around. The word isolating really feels like the most accurate way of describing it. I was a sophomore in college that could no longer make it to most of my classes, and eventually I just dropped down to one. I eventually moved home and primarily hung out with my parents while still forming community in my new environment. And even fast forwarding to some other seasons of my life during grad school, I chose to live in a quiet apartment instead of in the house of girls I really, really wanted to live with after coming off months of severe levels of pain. And before it was cool, I spent many a number of weeks quarantining in my parents' basement while avoiding dust by humidity. And something I've realized over the years And something I think the whole world is beginning to realize these days is that there are a lot of really basic human needs met within what are generally considered normal rhythms of a healthy person's life. Even though they don't always seem fun, the ability to go to work or school or even volunteer regularly, it does provide us a sense of connection to the outside world and generally opportunities to pour into people, to take on leadership, responsibility, and really simply apply the gifts we've been given and be creative in the way that our hearts were made to be. Honestly, I'm still constantly learning and relearning how to thrive when those abilities are challenged. But there are a few things I've found to be necessities that really, really keep me grounded in the midst of this process. First and foremost has been making peace with who I am, just as who I am before God. This is a pretty common theme you'll hear in probably a lot of my episodes, but honestly, I have to say that although circumstances were and are and continue to be a huge factor, in my case, the most painful isolation I've felt has been because of a certain sense of disconnection I felt from myself. Especially within the first few years, my health took a dive. With a history of being the busy girl, the sudden lack of all the noise in my life brought to surface a lot of uncertainties I had about who I really am. By God's grace, this was something I did begin to recognize at the beginning of college and really begin bringing to prayer. So I did have some sort of foundation I was beginning to develop. But here I was now not only having to face myself just as who I am, but as a sick version of who I am, who was dealing with something huge and mysterious and totally out of my control. And I got really scared. And as a result, I put some sort of wall up and failed to keep showing up to people authentically. I am not saying I've completely conquered this now, but definitely when I did really begin to choose to believe that I was loved and treasured, even when I felt like a crummy version of myself and still feel sometimes like a crummy version of myself, that's when staying in relationship with God became more of a priority. And this, more than anything, even if I'm not seeing people as much as I want to be, is what has allowed me to remain in communion, even when my circumstances are all turned upside down. Another huge thing, fairly related, when I'm struggling to find a healthy rhythm, has been adjusting my expectations. Seriously, over and over again, I learned this lesson. But whenever I do actually just let go of whatever life I feel like I should be having and choose to appreciate and believe in the value of the circumstances I'm facing. Even if I'm still sad or grieving, there's always a deeper sense of contentment that follows that. Having roommates and striving to love the people right in front of me, having a project to work on that gives me life, my version of exercise, and getting outside as much as possible. And yes, taking advantage of technology and the opportunity to connect with people that it can provide are a few more of the more practical aspects I've found to be essential that are also proving beneficial during this time of coronavirus. You want to know something else that's gotten me through these days? Besides discovering a love for gardening and makeshift landscaping, podcasting. Somehow I've managed to get in a lot of interviews the past few months full of life circumstances my friends have faced that taught them to choose grit. And I know I'm a little biased, but I really think their voices are exactly what we need right now. From homelessness to hating your job to depression to issues of race to debilitating chronic illness, this season has got you covered. And these stories have given me so much hope. To give you a little glimpse of the hearts you're going to experience if you keep listening, here are some of the things they said are getting them through everything happening in this year of 2020.
Getting me through 2020 is my jigsaw puzzles. I think just being outside.
I have to just say community.
Connecting more with some old friends. So I've been having weekly Zoom meetings with my good college friends.
A mindset of freedom of living in the present and, really putting the energy to the relationships I know matter and not trying to control what the next couple of months are going to look like.
Being okay with discomfort.
And being able to pray and be okay with having a relationship with God has helped me.
You just kind of have to accept that it's happening and adapt to it. And trust that you will adapt.
My hope is that it's an opportunity for us to all acknowledge who we are. We are human.
I think because of the coronavirus and people being able to sort of really having to sort of confront more of these things, you can't really get away now. And so I'm hopeful that sort of this weird time will lead to some change.
See what I mean? So good. Can't wait to share the rest of these conversations with you all and continue learning together how to choose courage, resolve, and strength of character, i.e. grit, in the midst of life's challenges.